are back. It's the Alex Jones Show. I am Jason Bermas sitting in, and we are joined by Secret Mysteries of America's Beginnings, writer and director, all three parts, Chris Pinto. And Chris, you know, all of these really touch on similar ideas, and it progresses, but that one idea of the creation of this new global governance, this new world order, you refer to it as possibly world democracy. You get into masonry, secret societies, the architecture of D.C., and in the latest one, the Maitreya figure. And I want to get into that Maitreya figure a little bit later and how that may coincide with the Bohemian Grove. I sent you a couple pictures after our discussion the last time. But why don't you give an overview of, you know, people like Benjamin Franklin and Queen Elizabeth who are featured in the first one of these, the New Atlantis?
Well, Queen Elizabeth, she's a very interesting character. I mean, she preferred at the time, the politics of England were very much Protestant England against Catholic Europe. And the Pope had excommunicated Elizabeth, and was trying to have her assassinated, basically. And so you had all of these spies, you had Jesuits, you had very zealous Catholics who, according to the Catholic doctrine at that time, if a monarch were excommunicated by the Pope, then Catholics who were faithful had a responsibility not to obey that monarch first, and second, to try and kill them. And so this created, a climate of potential assassination around Elizabeth. So what happened was the English formed a number of groups, at least one in particular, the Rosicrucians, who formed around Elizabeth to protect her from assassination. So they developed an intelligence network where they were involved with ciphers and secret codes and all this other kind of stuff. And Bacon and John Dee, in fact, John Dee is the original Agent 007. He was the inspiration for Ian Fleming's whole James Bond series, because Dee would sign his correspondence to the Queen 007. He's also the original magus or wizard figure that inspired Dr. Faustus, inspired Gandalf from Lord of the Rings, inspired Albus Dumbledore from the Harry Potter books, and so on. So Dr. John Dee is a very interesting character, but he was the Queen's astrologer, and he had a powerful influence over Queen Elizabeth and apparently on Sir Francis Bacon. But Dee was the head of the Rosicrucians for a time, and then he handed off the reins to Bacon. Bacon ends up financing the Virginia Company, heavily financing the Virginia Company that then comes to Jamestown in 1607. And if you look at the Great Seal of Virginia today, the Seal of Virginia has a picture of a female goddess wearing a helm and a spear, okay? And she's got her foot on the throne of like a fallen, or on the neck of a fallen tyrant. And the goddess, if you look at her very carefully, they give her another name, but she is almost the exact image of Pallas Athena. And Pallas Athena was the goddess that Francis Bacon claimed was his muse, his inspiration and so on, of wisdom and whatnot. So now you fast forward into American history, 100 and some odd years later, and you've got Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin was in his day like he was a latter-day Francis Bacon. Bacon was the father of the modern scientific method. He developed all of these ciphers and secret codes, had books on them and so on. Very involved in printing and literature and writing and publishing things and so on. And Benjamin Franklin was involved in all the same things. A lot of people don't realize, we know, Franklin from the discovery of electricity, but he had a number of scientific inventions that, the bifocals and so on. But he was very involved in science, very involved in writing and printing, even as Bacon was, and he even published a book on cipher secret codes. But he was, during the American Revolution, what Bacon was during the time of Queen Elizabeth, because Bacon was a part of this whole intelligence network to protect the Queen. And Franklin was really the Special Forces intelligence guy during the American Revolution, working on behalf of America over in Europe. He was in France. He was in England. He was the member of secret societies in America, England, and France, the three countries that were all involved in the American Revolution.
And these secret societies, by the way, are the precursors to today's intelligence networks. I mean, that's even mainline. I mean, in The Good Shepherd, the film by Robert De Niro starring Matt Damon, they openly show you that they used Yale as a recruitment tool for people in Skull and Bones, which was yet another precursor to these intelligence agencies, to bring in the CIA and the OSS.
Absolutely. I mean, the Her Majesty's Secret Service, MI5 or MI6 and all of that in England was with Walsingham, who was working with Bacon, John Dee, all of these guys. This is how they developed their secret code system. It's brought to America, and from America, as you said, it ultimately unfolds into our, the OSS and then the CIA today. Mm-hmm. But it's a very interesting history, but it's all based on these secret societies. And so Franklin was very, very interesting. In fact, there are some people who have written books about Franklin, calling him a spy master and even questioning his loyalty to the United States during the Revolutionary War, because it came out years after the war that Franklin had a double agent, a British spy that was working on his staff, and that he'd been warned about many times, but he never did anything to get rid of the guy. And there's actually a book out there called Ben Franklin, Patriot or Spy. It's called Number 23, Ben Franklin, Patriot or Spy, because Franklin's code name with British intelligence was Number 23, or Number 72, Number 72, and he was also called Moses. That was his other nickname. But Franklin was involved with a secret group in England called the Hellfire Club. And you mentioned this last time I was on the radio with you, Jason, about Franklin and the Hellfire Club, and then now they found in the 1990s, they dug up his home there in London and found all of these dead bodies, the bones of these cadavers and so on.
And that's mainline news, by the way. That's not just me and you talking about it or some obscure author. I think it was like London Telegraph or Guardian. I mean, it was as mainline as it could get.
Yeah, in fact, today they've turned his home into a museum where you can go there, and they actually have some of the bones. They found not only the bones of adults and children, but they found animal bones beneath those. Oh. And I've seen a few pictures of the remains, and they look like they're sort of blackened in places and charred, almost as if they had been burned. Mm-hmm. And, one of the things that satanic groups do, they have human sacrifices, but they also have animal sacrifices as well. And, we can only wonder. Their official explanation is that there was a medical school in Franklin's home for like a year and a half or 2 years, and that's where the bodies came from. Mm-hmm. But still, he was, deeply involved with this Hellfire group that had been founded by Sir Francis Dashwood. Mm-hmm. And Dashwood was like a close advisor to King George III, who was the king we were fighting against in the American Revolution. Dashwood was a member of the House of Commons, the House of Lords. He was a prominent member. And there were other political figures that were a part of this group that called themselves the Monks of Medmenham Abbey, but their nickname was the Hellfire Club. And I believe the Hellfire Club, if you study them and what they were into, I believe they were a precursor to the Bohemian Grove Club that you guys exposed in Alex Jones' video, showing the rituals in the Bohemian Grove. Mm-hmm. Some of those guys are dressed up like, Catholic priests and cardinals and so on. With
exactly. The head guy wears what looks like a pope hat. He's in a long robe, and he has himself a staff as he gives this very Babylonian Gaia worship ritual. And then at the end of the ritual, someone rows in on a boat, gives him an effigy of a baby. Meanwhile, there are probably a dozen or so other gentlemen holding torches in what appear to be druidic-like outfits, waiting for this cremation of care, if you will. And then they drop the body on this fiery, altar in front of the owl god Moloch, this 40-foot statue that's hollowed out and has their little sound system in it. Everybody starts cheering and fireworks go off, and that's the kickoff of this ceremony. Very Christian.
Yeah, well, you've exactly. But all those elements, well, at least the dressing up like, popes and cardinals and bishops and this kind of thing, the Hellfire Club did all of that. They also had a statue, which they have sort of a parallel of at the Bohemian Grove. They had a statue as you went into their underground of a figure with his finger over his lips, like be quiet, don't keep secrets. And they do the same thing. Who is that figure?